"Stop!" he shouted. Then he saw the Apache mark that once saved his life. Growing up in a small town in Kansas, he spent his days exploring the fields behind his house, climbing trees, and imagining grand adventures. While other kids were content with video games or sports, John was drawn to stories of bravery and survival. He loved reading about explorers, soldiers, and people who faced impossible odds and came out alive. He often wondered what it would be like to be in their shoes, to face fear and still find the strength to act. From an early age, John had a natural sense of responsibility. He would help his younger siblings with homework, take care of stray animals, and often stand up for kids who were bullied at school. His father, a former firefighter, admired John's determination and discipline, though he sometimes worried about the boy's relentless curiosity. "John," his father would say, "you have to be careful. The world isn't always kind to those who seek adventure." But John, with a quiet smile, would nod and continue planning his next escapade. There was something inside him that pushed him forward, a feeling that life was meant to be experienced fully, even if it meant facing danger. After finishing high school, John knew he wanted more than the quiet life of his hometown. College was an option, but he felt the call to serve, to test himself in a real-world environment where courage and quick thinking mattered. He joined the U.S. Army, inspired by stories of heroism and the sense of purpose it offered. From the first day of training, he realized that military life was unlike anything he had imagined. The drills were grueling, the schedules unforgiving, and the instructors demanding. Yet John thrived. He learned to push his body beyond limits he didn't know existed, and to trust his mind when fear threatened to take over. John's decision to become a medic was driven by his desire to save lives. While many soldiers focused on combat roles, John wanted to be the one who could help others survive. The training was intense. He had to master emergency medical procedures, learn how to stay calm under extreme pressure, and understand the physical and psychological needs of his fellow soldiers. He often stayed up late practicing bandages, injections, and first aid techniques, determined to be ready for anything. His instructors noticed his dedication and quiet confidence, and they knew he had the potential to be more than just a good medic. He could be exceptional. Years passed, and John was deployed to several conflict zones. Each mission brought new challenges and dangers, from hostile territories to harsh climates. He saw things that most people could never imagine: the fear in the eyes of young children, the desperation of families caught in the crossfire, the courage of soldiers standing tall despite overwhelming odds. Every experience left a mark on him, shaping his understanding of life and death, of bravery and sacrifice. He learned to move with caution, to read situations quickly, and to make decisions in split seconds. He also discovered the power of small gestures, like a reassuring hand on a comrade's shoulder or a quiet word of encouragement. These moments reminded him why he had chosen this path. It was during one of these deployments that John met Sergeant Red Hawk, a Native American soldier from the Apache tribe. Red Hawk was a man of few words, but his presence commanded respect. He had been in countless missions, seen more than anyone should, yet he carried himself with calm wisdom. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, John and Red Hawk sat around a small fire outside their base. The air was thick with dust and tension, and both men were exhausted. Red Hawk noticed John's weariness and handed him a small wooden token. It was simple, a carved symbol, an Apache mark. Red Hawk explained that it was a sign of protection and guidance, meant to remind the bearer to trust their instincts and stay resilient in the face of danger. John accepted the gift with gratitude, though he wasn't sure he fully understood its significance at the time. Still, he felt a strange sense of comfort holding the mark in his hand. It was smooth and warm from the carving, and the intricate design seemed to hold a silent promise. Over the next weeks, the mark became a small talisman for John. Whenever he faced a difficult decision or a moment of fear, he would touch it, take a deep breath, and remind himself of Red Hawk's words, "Trust yourself, and you will find the way." That simple phrase became a mantra, guiding him through situations where hesitation could mean disaster. John's bond with Red Hawk grew stronger over time. They shared stories of their childhoods, their families, and the paths that had led them to this point. John admired Red Hawk's calm demeanor and the way he approached life with quiet confidence. Red Hawk, in turn, recognized John's courage and dedication. He saw that John wasn't just brave, he was thoughtful, compassionate, and determined to make a difference. Their friendship was built on mutual respect, trust, and the unspoken understanding that they could rely on each other in the most dangerous circumstances. Despite the chaos of deployment, John tried to hold on to small moments of normalcy. He would write letters to his family, describing his experiences without revealing too much danger. He would train younger soldiers, sharing his knowledge and encouraging them to remain calm under pressure. He would also take a few minutes each day to hold the Apache mark, reflecting on the lessons he had learned from Red Hawk and from his own experiences. These moments were brief, but they grounded him, giving him a sense of stability in a world that often felt unpredictable and threatening. There were days when John questioned his choices, wondering if the risks were worth it. He had seen friends injured, some permanently, and others lost entirely. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, especially knowing that, as a medic, he held the lives of others in his hands. Yet, even in those moments of doubt, the Apache mark reminded him of resilience. It reminded him that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. It reminded him that survival often depended on instincts honed through experience and trust in oneself. Through it all, John remained vigilant, aware that danger could strike at any moment. He learned to notice subtle signs, a change in the wind, unusual movement in the distance, the faintest sound that others might ignore. These instincts saved him more than once, allowing him to anticipate threats and protect both himself and his comrades. He began to see the connection between his instincts and the Apache mark, realizing that it had become more than a symbol. It was a reminder of his own inner strength, his ability to stay alert and act decisively when it mattered most. By the time John was halfway through his deployment, he had become a respected figure among his peers. Soldiers admired his calm under pressure, his skill in emergencies, and his unwavering dedication to saving lives. Yet despite the accolades and recognition, John remained humble. He knew that every mission carried risk, and that no amount of preparation could guarantee safety. What mattered most, he realized, was the combination of training, instinct, and the quiet guidance symbolized by the small mark he carried in his pocket, a connection to a past encounter that had already shaped his path in ways he was only beginning to understand. The sun had barely risen when John Carter and his team prepared for another day in a land that seemed to hold danger in every shadow. The air was dry, carrying the faint scent of dust and heat, and the landscape stretched endlessly, dotted with small hills and abandoned buildings. For many, this environment was harsh and unforgiving, but John had learned to read it like a map. Every movement of the wind, every distant sound, every shift in the light could carry a warning. He had spent years developing instincts that told him when something was off, when danger was near. Today, those instincts felt sharper than ever. The convoy was small but carefully planned. A few armored vehicles led the way, carrying supplies and personnel, while others followed, maintaining a precise formation. John sat in the middle vehicle, scanning the horizon with trained eyes. He could feel the tension in the air, the kind that settles into your chest when you know something isn't right, even if you can't yet see it. He adjusted the Apache mark in his pocket, letting his fingers brush against the carved wood. It was a silent reassurance, a reminder that he had survived before by trusting his instincts and acting decisively. As the convoy moved forward, John noticed subtle signs that made his stomach tighten. The dust kicked up by the vehicle seemed uneven, as if someone had disturbed the terrain recently. The chatter among the soldiers felt too casual, too routine, and that in itself raised alarms. John's gaze swept the buildings and hills lining the narrow road. A single unmoving figure on a distant ridge, barely visible, caught his attention. He squinted, trying to make sense of it. Something about the stance, the way the figure didn't move, felt deliberate. He leaned forward and whispered to the driver, "Keep it steady and don't let anyone get too far ahead." Minutes passed, each one stretching longer than the last. John's heartbeat was steady, but his mind raced through scenarios, calculating risks and potential outcomes. His training as a medic had taught him to remain calm under pressure, but he also knew that awareness could mean the difference between life and death. He glanced at the soldiers in his vehicle, all focused on their equipment and radios, unaware of the silent warning his instincts had raised. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. In this line of work, hesitation could cost lives. Suddenly he saw it, a glint in the sand, small but unmistakable. A trigger for an improvised explosive device, placed carefully in a spot meant to catch the convoy at just the right moment. John's heart sank, and time seemed to slow. He didn't shout immediately, unsure if the team behind him had noticed. But as the realization hit, adrenaline surged through him, sharpening his senses. He knew that if the vehicles continued on their path, the consequences would be catastrophic. "Stop!" John shouted, his voice cutting through the dusty air. The sound echoed across the convoy, startling everyone. Engines roared as drivers slammed brakes, tires skidding on loose gravel. Some soldiers looked back, confused, while others stared wide-eyed at the road ahead. The convoy jerked to a halt just a few feet short of the deadly device. John's instincts, guided by years of experience and the silent presence of the Apache mark in his pocket, had saved them all. For a few tense moments, silence fell over the convoy. Soldiers stared at the road, the hidden danger now visible. John stepped out carefully, motioning for others to follow. The device was small, camouflaged perfectly with the surroundings. Any slight misstep could have triggered it. John knelt beside it, inspecting it cautiously. He could feel the weight of the moment. The line between life and death had been incredibly thin. The Apache mark had been his silent guide, a reminder of the importance of vigilance and trust in instinct. After the immediate threat passed, John's mind refused to rest. He helped secure the area, coordinating with his team to ensure no other dangers were nearby. As the tension eased slightly, he allowed himself a quiet moment to reflect. The memory of Red Hawk and the carved Apache mark flashed in his mind. How had a small token from years ago played such a role in saving lives today? It wasn't magic, he reminded himself. It was trust, awareness, and the lessons he had learned over years of experience. The mark had served as a reminder to stay alert, to observe the small details, and to act decisively when needed. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. John's attention never wavered. He inspected vehicles, checked supplies, and ensured that his fellow soldiers were alert and focused. Each movement, each decision carried weight. He shared subtle warnings and advice, guiding the younger soldiers without alarming them. He could see how his calm but vigilant approach reassured them, giving them confidence in a situation that could easily spiral into chaos. By nightfall, the convoy had reached its destination safely, but John's mind was still restless. As the team set up camp for the night, John found a quiet corner to sit and think. The Apache mark felt heavier in his pocket, almost as if it carried the weight of the day's events. He studied its carved lines, tracing the pattern with his fingers, and reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He thought about the long hours of training, the countless missions, and the friendships forged in fire and danger. Most of all, he thought about the invisible threads that connected him to people like Red Hawk, who had shared wisdom and guidance that transcended words. John realized that survival wasn't about luck. It wasn't about being in the right place at the right time. It was about preparation, awareness, and the willingness to trust oneself. The Apache mark was a symbol of all those lessons, a reminder that courage and vigilance could save lives. He made a silent promise to himself that he would continue to honor that guidance, not just for his own sake, but for the sake of every soldier who relied on him. Even as exhaustion settled into his bones, John remained alert. He could hear the faint sounds of the desert night, the rustle of wind through the sparse brush, the distant calls of nocturnal animals, the subtle noises of the camp settling down. Each sound was a reminder that life was fragile, that danger could appear at any moment. He felt a renewed sense of purpose. The day had tested him, and he had passed, but he knew that the journey was far from over. Every mission ahead would demand the same focus, the same courage, and the same trust in the instincts honed over years of experience. As he prepared to rest, John thought about the lessons he had learned from the Apache mark. It wasn't just a symbol of protection. It was a teacher, a guide, and a reminder of the strength that comes from awareness and trust. He understood now that the mark had not saved him by magic. It had guided him to listen to himself, to notice what others might miss, and to act without hesitation when the moment demanded it. It had been a quiet companion through countless dangers, and its presence had once again made the difference between disaster and survival. In that quiet night, with the stars above and the desert stretching endlessly around him, John felt a sense of connection, not just to the people around him, but to the lessons of the past, to the wisdom passed down through generations, and to the invisible bonds that guide us in moments of crisis. He tucked the Apache mark safely into his pocket, a constant reminder that even in the most dangerous situations, guidance and courage could be found if one trusted themselves. By dawn, John was ready to move again. He knew that every mission carried risks, but he also knew that he was prepared to face them. The events of the day had reinforced the lessons he had learned over a lifetime. Vigilance, courage, and trust in instinct were the keys to survival. The Apache mark, a small carved symbol, had played its silent role once more, guiding him to make the right decisions and protect those around him. And as the convoy rolled forward into another uncertain day, John carried with him not just the weight of responsibility, but the quiet assurance that he was ready for whatever lay ahead. After the convoy reached its temporary base safely, John Carter felt a mixture of relief and unease. Relief that no one had been hurt, that his instincts had worked in time to prevent a tragedy. Unease because he knew that danger was never truly gone. In the deserts and hills where he operated, threats could appear at any moment, hidden behind the smallest details. An unusual mound of sand, a broken branch, or even the flicker of movement in the distance. He had learned long ago that survival was never a one-time achievement. It required constant vigilance, careful observation, and unwavering attention to even the smallest signs. The next few days were a test of endurance and mental strength. John's team had to conduct patrols, deliver supplies, and maintain communication lines in areas where hostility could strike without warning. Each mission demanded focus, speed, and precise coordination. John, as the medic, carried not only his medical equipment but also the responsibility for his teammates' lives. Every time the convoy moved, he scanned the terrain with practiced eyes, noting patterns and potential hazards. The memory of the explosive device they had narrowly avoided haunted him slightly. He could still see it lying there in the sand, its presence almost invisible if someone had walked past without noticing. It reminded him that danger often hides in plain sight, waiting for the smallest oversight to turn into disaster. Despite the constant tension, John made a conscious effort to maintain a sense of calm and routine. Each morning he checked his equipment meticulously, ensuring bandages, medicines, and emergency kits were ready. He trained younger soldiers, showing them how to handle injuries, react to unexpected situations, and think quickly under pressure. In doing so, he shared not just knowledge but also confidence. He knew that a well-prepared team was less likely to panic, more likely to act decisively, and more likely to survive. Yet, no matter how prepared they were, he could never let his own vigilance waver. One evening, after a long day of patrols, John found a rare quiet moment. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the rugged terrain. He stepped away from the makeshift camp and found a small, elevated spot overlooking the valley below. The sight was deceptively calm. The desert stretched endlessly, quiet except for the occasional rustle of the wind. But John knew that even in this seeming peace, danger could appear in an instant. He held the Apache mark in his hand, tracing the carved lines with his fingers. Its presence felt heavier now, almost as if it carried the weight of the missions, the lives it had silently helped protect, and the responsibility that came with each passing day. As John reflected, he realized that his reliance on the mark had grown stronger. It was no longer just a symbol of protection. It had become a guide, a connection to his own instincts and the lessons he had learned from Red Hawk. He understood that the mark's influence was subtle. It did not act as a magical shield or an external force. It reminded him to trust himself, to notice what others might miss, and to act decisively when a critical moment arrived. He felt gratitude for the old soldier who had given it to him, for sharing a piece of wisdom that transcended words, a guide that had silently shaped John's survival. The next morning the convoy set out again, heading toward a small village where aid supplies were to be delivered. The road was narrow, winding through rocky hills, and John remained alert, scanning every detail. As they moved forward, he noticed slight irregularities, footprints leading off the path, dust disturbed in patterns that didn't match natural movement. Something felt off. His heart rate increased slightly, not out of fear, but because his instincts were signaling caution. He touched the Apache mark lightly, drawing strength from its presence. It reminded him to stay calm, to analyze carefully, and to trust the knowledge and training he had built over years. As the convoy approached a bend, John's eyes caught a faint glimmer of metal hidden among the rocks on the side of the road. His stomach tightened. He immediately recognized the signs of another trap, this one designed to look ordinary, almost invisible to the casual observer. He signaled to the driver to slow down, his voice firm but calm. "Hold position," he instructed. The soldiers glanced at him, uncertainty in their eyes, but trusted his judgment. John stepped out, examining the suspicious area with care. Every detail mattered: the angle of the sun, the position of the rocks, the slightest variation in the soil. He knew that one wrong step could trigger disaster. It took careful analysis and steady hands, but John managed to neutralize the threat without incident. As he worked, he thought about how quickly events could have unfolded differently. The young soldiers around him watched closely, learning not just from the actions but from the mindset required to stay alive. John felt a sense of pride in their attention and discipline, yet a quiet weariness settled over him. Each close call reminded him of the fragile balance between life and death, and the immense responsibility he carried as a medic and protector of his team. Later that day, as they continued toward the village, John could feel tension building in the convoy. Everyone had sensed that something had changed. The quiet awareness he relied on had spread subtly among the team, creating a cautious energy that kept them alert. John reflected on how experience shaped perception. Years of training, countless missions, and small moments of observation had taught him to notice what others might overlook. And yet he realized that none of it would matter without trust. Trust in his instincts, trust in his training, and trust in the lessons symbolized by the Apache mark. When they finally reached the village, John was struck by the stark contrast between the danger of the journey and the calm of the people awaiting their arrival. Villagers emerged slowly, curious but cautious, as the convoy delivered aid and medical supplies. John moved among them, offering assistance where needed, checking injuries, and ensuring that the most vulnerable received care. The experience reminded him of the broader purpose behind his missions. Each life saved, each injury treated, was a testament to preparation, vigilance, and compassion. The Apache mark felt lighter now, not because the danger had disappeared, but because he had acted correctly, guided by awareness and courage. That evening, after the team had set up camp, John found another quiet spot to sit alone. The sky above was a tapestry of stars, and the desert stretched endlessly, silent except for the occasional whisper of the wind. He held the Apache mark in his hand, reflecting on the past few days. The narrow escapes, the traps, the constant tension, all of it had shaped him, tested him, and strengthened his resolve. He understood now that survival was not a matter of luck. It was the result of preparation, observation, decisive action, and the willingness to trust oneself. The mark had guided him once again, serving as a quiet reminder of all these lessons. As he stared at the stars, John thought about the future. He knew that danger was far from over, and that each day could bring new challenges. But he also knew that he was ready. The experiences of the past, combined with the wisdom symbolized by the Apache mark, had prepared him to face what lay ahead. He felt a sense of calm determination, a quiet confidence that he could navigate the uncertainties of his missions while protecting those who depended on him. The mark was more than a symbol now. It was a companion, a reminder of resilience, courage, and the strength found in trust and awareness. In those moments, John realized something profound. The mark had not only guided him through danger, it had also shaped his understanding of life, responsibility, and human connection. It reminded him that bravery was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. It showed him that even in the most challenging situations, guidance and wisdom could be found if one paid attention and trusted their instincts. And it reminded him that every life mattered, every action had consequences, and that vigilance and courage could make the difference between survival and disaster. As the desert night deepened and the camp grew quiet, John carefully tucked the Apache mark into his pocket. It had already saved lives, and he knew it would continue to guide him in the days to come. With a final glance at the starlit sky, he allowed himself a moment of rest, knowing that the struggle was far from over, but confident that he was prepared. His mind remained alert, his senses attuned to the smallest details, and his heart steady with purpose. The mark, the lessons, and the experiences of the past weeks had become inseparable from who he was, a soldier, a medic, and a man guided by instinct, courage, and a quiet wisdom passed down through time. The days that followed seemed calm at first, but John Carter knew better then. To trust appearances. In the desert, quiet could be deceptive. Danger often lurked where it was least expected, hidden in plain sight. John's instincts were alert, and the memory of the last ambush lingered like a shadow at the edge of his mind. Every patrol, every turn of the road carried potential risks. He moved carefully, observing patterns in the terrain, listening to the subtle sounds of the wind and sand, and watching his team for signs of fatigue or distraction. The weight of responsibility rested heavily on his shoulders, but he had learned to carry it steadily, without showing fear. One morning, the convoy was assigned a mission to reach a remote village farther than they had ever traveled before. The journey would take them through narrow mountain passes and unprotected valleys, areas notorious for ambushes. John checked and rechecked his medical supplies, making sure every kit was complete, every bandage sterile, every tool ready. He could feel the tension in the air, not just among his team, but in himself. There was an unease that went beyond instinct, a sense that today's mission could change everything. The Apache mark in his pocket felt heavier than usual, a silent reminder of the dangers he might face and the lessons that had guided him this far. As the convoy began its journey, John's eyes scanned every detail of the landscape. Rocks, sand, shadows, every element was analyzed, processed, and weighed for potential threats. At first, everything appeared normal, but his intuition told him otherwise. Something subtle caught his attention, a small group of rocks slightly displaced on the edge of the path, as if someone had recently moved them. It was easy to overlook, but John recognized it as a sign that someone had been there, watching, waiting. He felt a surge of adrenaline and leaned closer to the driver, whispering instructions to maintain a cautious speed. The team trusted him instinctively, knowing that John's calm demeanor often masked his sharp awareness. The convoy proceeded carefully, every soldier alert to John's subtle cues. Hours passed, and tension built like a quiet drumbeat. The landscape shifted from open desert to narrow passes, where the cliffs rose sharply on both sides. Every shadow, every rock seemed to hold hidden danger. John's hands brushed the Apache mark in his pocket repeatedly, drawing strength and focus from it. Its carved lines reminded him to trust himself, to stay observant, and to act decisively if the moment demanded it. Suddenly, a glint of metal caught John's eye. He froze for a moment, his heart pounding but his mind sharp. Ahead, partially hidden under a pile of sand and debris, was a trigger for an explosive device. It was small, almost invisible, but deadly. John realized immediately that the convoy was heading straight toward it. Without hesitation, he shouted, "Stop! Everyone stop!" His voice cut through the tense silence, commanding attention and action. The convoy halted just feet from the hidden danger, engines idling as soldiers stared in shock and confusion. John stepped out carefully, assessing the device from a safe distance. Every second mattered. He signaled to the team to stay back while he analyzed the situation. The device was sophisticated, with hidden triggers and multiple fail-safes. One wrong move could set it off. John's mind raced, recalling everything he had learned from years of training, from countless missions, and from the silent guidance of the Apache mark. He knew that success depended on patience, precision, and absolute focus. Minutes felt like hours as John worked. He carefully examined the device, identifying the safest way to neutralize it. The soldiers around him watched, learning from his calm approach and methodical thinking. John's focus was unshakable, guided by instinct and the lessons embedded in the Apache mark. He could feel the weight of the responsibility. The lives of his team depended on his ability to remain composed under extreme pressure. Finally, John managed to disarm the device without incident. Relief washed over him, but it was tempered by the knowledge that the threat was never truly gone. The desert could produce danger at any moment, in any form. He gathered his team, reminding them to remain alert and vigilant as they continued their journey. The mission pressed on, and every step required careful attention, steady nerves, and trust in one another. As the convoy moved forward, John couldn't shake the sense that something larger was at play. He reflected on the significance of the Apache mark, realizing that it had guided him not just through specific moments of danger, but through an entire way of thinking. It reminded him to be aware, to trust his instincts, and to act decisively when necessary. The mark was more than a token. It was a teacher, a symbol of resilience and wisdom passed down from one generation to another. Its presence in his pocket was a quiet but powerful force, influencing every decision he made. Later that day, as the convoy approached the village, the terrain grew more challenging. The road narrowed further, winding along cliffs with sheer drops on one side. Visibility was limited, and the potential for ambush increased with every turn. John's senses were on high alert, every movement of the wind, every shift in shadow scrutinized for hidden threats. He could feel the tension among his team, the unspoken anxiety that came with operating in such precarious conditions. He spoke calmly to them, offering guidance and reassurance, but inside he was entirely focused on the task at hand. Then, without warning, gunfire erupted from the cliffs above. The convoy was under attack. Soldiers ducked, seeking cover behind vehicles, while bullets ricocheted off the rocks and metal around them. John immediately assessed the situation, looking for ways to protect his team and provide medical support if needed. Instinct and training took over. He moved quickly, directing soldiers to safer positions while scanning for injured personnel. Every second counted, and hesitation could mean disaster. In the chaos, John spotted a young soldier who had been hit in the leg. Blood was spreading quickly, and the soldier was in shock. Without thinking twice, John dashed across the open area, shielded by the terrain and the chaos around him. He knelt beside the injured soldier, assessing the wound and applying first aid with precision and care. The young soldier winced but survived, thanks to John's quick actions. The Apache mark pressed lightly against his chest in his pocket, a silent reminder of the guidance and protection that had helped him navigate this critical moment. The firefight continued for several minutes, but John's calm leadership and quick thinking helped the team regain control. They moved strategically, clearing the area and ensuring that no one was left vulnerable. The attackers eventually withdrew, and the convoy was able to regroup. Though exhausted, John and his team had survived. The experience left them shaken, but also more connected, more aware of the importance of vigilance, and more grateful for the skills and instincts that had carried them through. After the dust settled, John took a quiet moment to reflect. He understood that the day's events had tested every lesson he had learned: the importance of preparation, the power of observation, the need for decisive action, and the value of trust. The Apache mark, a small carved token, had been a constant companion, a reminder of resilience, wisdom, and the strength that comes from trusting oneself. It had guided him through moments of extreme danger, helping him save lives and protect his team. That night, as the convoy rested and the desert grew silent once more, John sat alone, holding the Apache mark in his hand. He traced its carved lines, feeling the weight of the day's events. The mark had been with him through countless missions, each one testing his courage and judgment. He realized that it was not just a symbol of protection, but a teacher, a guide that helped him navigate the complexities of life and danger. Its presence reminded him that survival was not about luck. It was about preparation, awareness, and the courage to act when it mattered most. John knew that the mission was far from over and that new challenges awaited, but he also knew that he was ready. He had faced danger, protected his team, and acted decisively under pressure. The Apache mark had guided him, and he had trusted his instincts. He felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, not just for surviving, but for understanding the deeper lessons that had brought him to this moment. It was a lesson in resilience, courage, and the power of guidance, lessons that would continue to shape his path in the days ahead. As he tucked the mark safely into his pocket and looked up at the stars above, John felt a profound sense of connection, not just to the people around him, but to the wisdom passed down through generations, to the lessons learned from experience, and to the silent guidance that had protected him more than once. He knew that the struggle was far from over, but he was ready to face it. With vigilance, courage, and the silent guidance of the Apache mark, he would continue to navigate the dangers ahead, protecting lives and carrying forward the lessons of resilience and trust that had guided him through the most critical moments of his life. The morning after the ambush, the desert was quiet. A gentle wind moved through the hills, carrying with it the faint scent of dust and dry earth. John Carter sat outside his vehicle, feeling the cool breeze against his face. His team had settled into a rhythm of cautious vigilance, knowing that danger could appear at any moment. John, however, allowed himself a few moments of reflection. The previous day had tested him in ways few others could understand, and though he had survived and protected his team, the events had left a lasting impression on his mind and spirit. As he held the Apache mark in his hand, John felt the weight of everything it represented. It was more than a small carved symbol. It had become a connection to courage, to instinct, and to wisdom passed down through generations. Each time he touched it, he remembered the lessons Red Hawk had shared years ago. Trust yourself, stay alert, and act decisively. These lessons had guided him through countless dangers, and they had done so again when the convoy had been ambushed. John realized that the mark was not magic, but a powerful reminder of the strength within him, the inner resources he could call upon when facing life-or-death situations. After a short breakfast, John gathered his team for a briefing. Their mission was to reach the village ahead, deliver aid, and provide medical support. Despite the previous day's events, there was no hesitation in their movements, only focus, preparation, and careful planning. John spoke calmly, outlining the route, noting potential hazards, and reminding everyone to remain alert. The younger soldiers looked to him with respect and trust. His calm confidence, born from experience and sharpened instincts, reassured them. John knew that leadership was as much about maintaining morale and confidence as it was about strategy and knowledge. The convoy set out again, moving cautiously along the winding road. Every rock, every shadow, every sound was observed with care. John's senses were heightened, attuned to the smallest variations in the terrain. He noticed footprints, slight shifts in sand, and the glint of metal that could indicate hidden danger. His hands brushed the Apache mark frequently, a grounding ritual that reminded him to stay vigilant, calm, and focused. The road was long and challenging, but John's experience and preparation kept the convoy moving safely. Halfway to the village, the team encountered a small group of civilians. They were wary at first, unsure of the soldiers' intentions, but John approached them with a calm and reassuring demeanor. He introduced himself, explaining that they were there to provide aid and medical assistance. The villagers' tension gradually eased as John treated minor injuries and helped distribute supplies. The sight of the Apache mark in John's hand seemed to catch the attention of one of the elders. The elder nodded subtly, as if recognizing the symbol, though John had no way of knowing its significance in their culture. Still, the moment felt meaningful, a quiet connection between past and present, between guidance and action. The convoy continued, reaching the outskirts of the village without incident. John led the team in setting up a temporary medical station. He attended to injuries, provided care for dehydration, and ensured that the most vulnerable received attention first. His experience allowed him to work quickly and efficiently, but he also remained gentle and reassuring. Each patient received not just medical aid but a sense of calm and safety. John knew that in these moments, compassion was as critical as skill. The Apache mark, resting in his pocket, served as a reminder that his purpose extended beyond survival. It was about helping others endure, recover, and thrive even in challenging circumstances. As evening approached, John took a few minutes to sit quietly, reflecting on the events of the past days. The ambush, the dangers of the desert, and the moments when he had had to act decisively weighed heavily on his mind. Yet, he also recognized the growth he had experienced. Each challenge had reinforced his awareness, his confidence, and his ability to lead under pressure. He understood that the Apache mark had been a guide, not a shield, but a teacher, helping him remain alert, calm, and resilient. Its significance had deepened, becoming an inseparable part of his approach to life and duty. John's thoughts turned to his team. They had survived, learned, and grown stronger through shared experiences. He realized that leadership was not about being in command alone, but about guiding others, sharing knowledge, and inspiring trust. He saw that the young soldiers were learning to notice subtle signs, trust their instincts, and support one another. This awareness, nurtured by careful guidance and example, would stay with them long after the mission ended. John felt pride not in himself alone, but in the entire team and the bonds they had formed through adversity. As the night fell, the desert became a canvas of stars. The camp was quiet except for the occasional rustle of wind or the soft conversation of soldiers sharing stories of their families and homes. John sat apart for a moment, the Apache mark in his hand, reflecting on the lessons of the past week. Survival was not the result of luck. It was the result of preparation, awareness, and decisive action. It was the result of trusting oneself and trusting those around you. The mark had been a silent guide, reminding him to remain vigilant, courageous, and compassionate. It had shaped his decisions and helped him protect the lives of those in his care. Suddenly, a thought struck him. How much of what had saved him was instinct, training, and experience, and how much was the quiet influence of guidance, symbolized by the Apache mark. He smiled softly, realizing that it did not matter. What mattered was that he had acted correctly, decisively, and with purpose. The mark had reminded him to trust himself, to stay alert, and to honor the responsibility he carried. In that sense, it had been a constant companion, quietly shaping the outcomes of life-or-death moments. The next morning, the convoy prepared to return to base. John moved among his team, ensuring that equipment was packed, medical supplies were restocked, and everyone was ready for the journey. Despite the challenges they had faced, there was a quiet sense of accomplishment. The missions had been difficult, dangerous, and testing, but the team had survived and achieved their objectives. John's guidance, instincts, and the lessons symbolized by the Apache mark had played a critical role in this success. Each soldier had learned something valuable, not just about survival, but about courage, awareness, and the importance of trust. During the return journey, John reflected on the broader lessons of his experience. The desert had tested him in countless ways, presenting challenges that demanded focus, resilience, and quick decision-making. He understood now that these experiences were part of a larger journey, one that involved growth, reflection, and the continuous development of character. The Apache mark, once a simple token, had become a symbol of this journey. It reminded him of past guidance, the value of instincts, and the quiet power of vigilance and courage. When they finally returned to base, the team was exhausted but safe. John took a moment to step aside, holding the Apache mark in his hand. He thought of Red Hawk, the soldier who had given it to him years ago, and of the lessons it represented. He realized that life, much like the desert, could be unpredictable and dangerous. But with preparation, awareness, and courage, it was possible to navigate the challenges successfully. The mark had guided him through critical moments, helping him save lives, protect his team, and grow stronger as a leader and as a person. John knew that his journey was far from over. There would be more missions, more challenges, and more moments that tested his courage and decision-making, but he also knew that he was ready. The experiences of the past days, combined with the guidance symbolized by the Apache mark, had prepared him for whatever lay ahead. He felt a deep sense of confidence and purpose, knowing that he could face danger with awareness, act decisively, and protect those who depended on him. As night fell over the base, John sat quietly, the Apache mark in his hand, reflecting on the journey he had undertaken. He thought of the moments when instinct had guided him, when vigilance had saved lives, and when courage had made the difference between survival and disaster. He understood that the mark was more than a symbol. It was a reminder of the strength within him, a guide through uncertainty, and a teacher of resilience and responsibility. With a final glance at the stars above, John carefully tucked the Apache mark into his pocket. Its presence was a comfort, a reminder of the lessons learned and the guidance that had helped him navigate the challenges of the past week. He felt gratitude for the experiences, for the comrades who had trusted him, and for the wisdom that had guided him through danger. The journey had tested him, but it had also strengthened him, shaping him into a more capable, aware, and courageous individual. In that quiet moment, John understood the true value of the Apache mark. It was not just a protective symbol. It was a reminder of resilience, courage, and trust. It was a testament to the power of experience, intuition, and the guidance that comes from listening to one's inner wisdom. As he prepared to rest for the night, he knew that whatever challenges awaited him in the future, he would face them with vigilance, courage, and the quiet guidance that had carried him through some of the most dangerous moments of his life.